Hey, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and while the Mega Man Legends series is only 2 games long, it did get a few spin-offs. Unfortunately, they were largely Japanese only, people just now finding ways to play them, but the one we did get was the Misadventures of Tron Bonne. It was a quirky little title, made up of a bunch of different game modes and mini-games, rather than a unified gameplay style, and was a Mega Man game that didn't have Mega Man in the title, so it wouldn't surprise me if some fans missed this just because of the lack of brand recognition. It's since become somewhat of a collector's item, going for some pretty large sums, but I managed to snag an original disc that used to belong to California Video before prices spiked, and despite some technical issues, have managed to clear it a few times. So if you've never played this one, I'm here to tell you what you're missing, and if you have, well, why don't we compare notes? This one's actually a prequel to the main series, it taking place right after construction of the Gesellschaft is completed. Teasel took out a huge loan to accomplish this, so he takes the Gustaff, Tron's personal mech, along with some Servbots out to explore some ruins and earn enough money to pay it back. When they reach it, they're confronted by Glide, Loan Shark Lex Los Goon, and ordered to pay up immediately. After a tussle, Teasel and Bonbon are kidnapped to be forced to work the loan off, and Tron discovers the IOU for 1,000,000 zenny Teasel left behind. She then sets out to earn the money herself, by any means necessary. And that's kind of the fun thing about this game. Most of the jobs you take on are illegal, no two ways about it. You're pirates, so larceny is the modus operandi, though there's also some legitimate business, like exploring ruins or a dig site. You even wind up helping several people in that last one, keeping the Bonds in that odd category where they're definitely the bad guys, but not completely irredeemable. In general though, it's more of the same fun writing you'd expect from the Legends series. The Bonds were always my favorite characters from this set of games, which I'm sure is a typical opinion, so an entry starring them, Tron and the Servbots specifically, is a huge win. While there's a few different plot lines going on, none are anything too deep, but the character interactions are the main attraction and they really deliver. Outside of the Bonds, most of the characters are new, and while a few will return, most are exclusive to this game. I do largely like the cast, so that's a bit of a shame, but it also helps give Misadventures its own unique identity, so I can't complain too much. I recommend playing the game in a way that'll net you the most dialogue, at least the first time. It's worth it, I promise. Your base of operations is the Gesellschaft. You can move around the different rooms to check in with your Servbots and perform a few different functions, some of which I'll touch on. Each Servbot has 4 different ratings: Attack, Speed, Brains, and Sloth. Attack is how strong they are in combat, Speed is how fast they move, Brains is how effective they are at gathering treasure, and Sloth is how lazy they are. For the first 3 stats, they start at least 1, and while the maximums vary by Servbot, the max is 4. As for Sloth, if you don't work a Servbot enough, they'll get lazy, and once this rating reaches 4, you won't be able to use them anymore. Each of these stats can be altered by cubes you can find, though you can also boost Brains by taking Servbots on missions and the others through minigames. To improve attack, there's this exercise where you toss bombs at various cutouts. If you time it right, you can grab a bomb as it's thrown to be able to toss it faster, though if you're off, it'll blow up and stun you for a few precious seconds. If you hit the bazooka cutout, you'll get a gun yourself and be able to attack much quicker, and if your trainer throws you some curry, you can eat it to pause the timer for a few seconds. To increase speed, you have to fill the lunch orders of a line of Servbots. If you want to get your stat point for either, you need to clear the minigame 3 times, it having a tighter time limit and quota each round. While you can retry if you fail, if you give up before your 3rd clear, you don't get partial credit. To clear a Servbot Sloth, there's a torture room minigame that opens up the first time one of your minions hits max. The lazy Servbot runs around a ring and you have to activate traps as he passes them. While you only need to beat this one once for it to work, it's still pretty unforgiving with the time limit. So while the minigames are fun, their high expectations can dilute that and make them more frustrating. Some Servbots have special skills though that are either helpful in base or on mission that can be unlocked by increasing one of their stats to a certain point, typically Brains, so it's worth paying attention to. Luckily, Brains is the easiest to boost. For more home-based stuff, in between missions, you can send out 3 Servbots to scout. You won't be able to use them for anything else while they're out, but when they get back, you'll get some bonus items. You can also find some of those in the field, and these can be used either as gifts for Servbots, scrap to cut down on the cost of upgrades, or just sold for some extra cash. You can check these out in the storage room, and if you're not sure what to use them for, you can get them appraised to give you a hint. The gifts are probably the most important. Giving the right object to the right Servbot can unlock special favors that they can do for you, such as upgrades and paint jobs for the Gustaff, developing different energy tanks for health refills, and playing music for you. Granted, for some of these you also need that aforementioned special skill. A dum-dum ain't gonna be able to craft a Gatling gun for you, making this whole process a little more complex than you might expect. I'd recommend a guide, at least when it comes to raising your Servbots, though as a general piece of advice, if you want to upgrade your equipment, taking the lab Servbots out with you is a must. When you are ready to head out, pick a mission and go to the meeting room. Here you can swap out weapons if it's a combat stage, as well as choose which Servbots to take with you. Paying attention to their stats and abilities for ones that best suit what you're doing is a good idea, though swapping often to raise your whole platoon's brain stats might also be wise. Plus, if you do this enough, you might actually get through a whole playthrough without ever unlocking the torture room, which happened my last run. Glad I had an old file I could use for video. One last oddball thing is the red head parts, which you can give to one of your little guys to label them as your favorite Servbot. This will increase the max of each of their stats that isn't already at 4 by 1, and they will get a pretty important role at the end of the game, so make sure you choose wisely. Though if you do skip it, it'll automatically go to Servbot number 1 when you reach a certain point. I think that about covers the management side of things, so now we can move on to the more traditional gameplay. There's a fair number of different mission types, and with most being optional, you can kinda pick and choose what you actually want to engage with. You start things off with an intro mission, which is one of the few required sections, and is meant to give you the basic controls, movement, camera, and how the Gustaff works, jumping, shooting, lock-on, grabbing and hucking objects, and the beacon bomb, a unique projectile you can fire to direct your squad of Servbots at something. Send them at an opening to have them explore for treasure, people to talk to them, enemies to trip them up, etc. This can also vary based on the mode, since NPCs can be friends in Digout, but enemies on the robbery mission. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The intro is largely a linear path, with scenarios thrown in to teach you the ropes and ends in a boss fight, so by the time that you clear it, you should be pretty well equipped to tackle the game proper, like a tutorial should do. Any missions that have more than is included here will have specific instructions when you get to them. As for those missions, you get 4 you can choose from starting out. They typically have 3 scenarios, each one getting longer and more difficult as you go along, but the rewards getting proportionally bigger to make continuing worth it. The bank robbery is probably the most straightforward, you piloting the Gustaff which you just learned to use, and you just needing to get to the end and win a fight against Denise Marmalade, a lady cop who continually breaks out new tricks to help even the odds, given that you do have a bit of an advantage with your battle bot. For the most part, you can just rush through these to claim the big reward at the end, but you could also look at them as a high score challenge, since there's a bunch of houses to ransack and police officers to blast for some extra change. In fact, Tron even sets a monetary goal the first time you choose this mission, to encourage your pillaging. You also get some block moving puzzles, where you use a modified Gustaff to pilfer crates from a harbor. There's limitations on how far you can travel while moving the different blocks, how many times you can lift stuff, and even some bonus crates of more luxury items for extra money. These puzzles come in sets of 3 and you can reset or go back just one move, so you don't need to be perfect right out of the gate to be successful, though do be careful since getting the last standard crate will end the round, which can cause you to miss out on the bonus box if you were saving it for last. Digout is listed as being an RPG, and it certainly is the mission with the most dialogue. You enter a set of underground tunnels, and this time, you're in control of the Finkel, an odd little pig-shaped drone. It still has the beacon bombs, though to attack, you need to either send your Servbots after something, or ram into things yourself, which can lead to you taking damage. You can also make a weird little sound for some reason, and this mode is largely first person, though you can use the minimap to maneuver yourself pretty reliably if you don't want to be constantly turning to see where you're going. And yeah, it's a dungeon crawler. There's side paths to explore, keys to find, chests to open, traps to disarm, and characters to befriend. There's even an optional side quest you can do if you keep up with it through all 3 scenarios. Each one ends with a boss that, since you don't have your typical arm cannon, you largely need to have your Servbots handle by sending them after whatever the thing's weakness is. In addition to the main treasure, the Aurora Stones, which will fetch a pretty penny, and the random bits of money you come across, You can also find some health refills that can be used here and in the more combat-focused missions, so while these might be the longest, they are a good way to build resources for the rest of the game. While most of these modes you can only complete 3 times and are then barred from, exploring the Nakkai Ruins, the target location from the intro, is something you can do as many times as you like. This actually feels a good bit like the mainline Legends games, the Gustaff already playing pretty similarly to Mega Man Volnut, and this being pretty much the same as when you would explore ruins with him. You run around checking out the various paths and rooms to find treasure, with some weak walls you can open up if you happen to come back with the right weapon. Speaking of, a lot of the stuff you'll need to upgrade the Gustaff can be found here, so this one's obviously meant to be revisited multiple times. There's a lot of Reaverbots to fight, even a few bosses, some puzzles, and a good bit of loot. While treasure chests won't respawn, enemies will, so if at any point you just want to clear the rest of your debt with some more traditional grinding, this is the spot to do it. When you're done, just head back to the entrance before you get taken out. About halfway through the game, a few more missions open up. One's another set of block moving puzzles, the other sees you robbing a farm. Each mission has you snatching up more and more desirable animals. You need to send your Servbots after them and have them take them back to your truck. If they get hit by an enemy while en route though, the animal will escape and you'll have to grab it again, so this is a mix of you maneuvering your Servbots, scaring the livestock towards them, and running interference so that they can make the drop. And like in most of these, you get a fight at the end, with you needing to protect the truck while taking out enemies, turning it into almost a sort of escort mission. After you pick your favorite Servbot, there's one other thing you can do for cash: gambling. Have Tron take a nap in her room and he'll hit up the casino. You get 2 games, one of which is high and low, where you guess whether the next card pulled will be higher or lower than the previous. Then there's bingo, which everyone knows bingo, right? Seems like you get a better return the sooner you hit it. This is another mission where there's no limit to how much you play it, and since I don't think it autosaves, you can use it to just get whatever money you need with a bit of persistence, if there's no other mode you want to do. While it's not something I use, I do think it's a good way to let people who have maybe hit their limit get to the end of the game. Speaking of, I'm gonna talk about that now, so skip ahead to the next part if you haven't played this one yet but are planning to. It's a retro game, but a rare retro game, you know? Okay, it's Tron's turn to get kidnapped, so your favorite Servbot steps up and leads a squad to rescue her, piloting the Gustaff, of course. You go through a maze-like prison, and while there are enemies in your way and cells to check, most baddies rush you so you can just jump over them, and when you try to walk past the target cell, you automatically trigger a cutscene, so you can just kinda rush through this one. After that, Tron takes back over to fight Glide, so just a harder version of the intro boss, and then you're back to Redcap for the finale. You run around a 2-level collarbone of a giant Reaverbot, pulling out pylons to cut its power source. The ones on its head, you'll need to send the other Servbots after with a beacon bomb. The rest, you grab and huck yourself. Though throwing one into another will destroy both and cut down on your workload. Smaller Reaverbots will run around and attack you, though if you're lucky, you can get away with not seeing any of them. When you're on the upper level though, you gotta worry about shots from the head in the middle, which have a bit of homing and do a lot of damage. Pop all the pylons and you'll get a more traditional final boss, a floating head with an actual health bar. That's so long that it goes off screen. It has a fair number of attacks, each with a corresponding color to give you a bit of forewarning, and in between, it'll gradually hover your way. Just strafe and shoot. While I have some trouble with the attack where it spins and rapid fires, everything else isn't too hard to dodge. I still wouldn't call it a pushover though, just because of its ridiculously long health bar. The first time you see it, you're likely to think you messed up the aspect ratio, but no, it's just that long, and it would be hilarious if the only thing more anxiety-inducing than no health bar wasn't one that you can't see the end of. This one can be an endurance test, especially if you didn't bring a good weapon, and if you do get hit, you're gonna take a lot of damage. Make sure you bring a lot of health refills, though save them for when you think you actually have it, since while you can continue from phase 1 if you fail, you'll only get your resources back if you do a full restart, back before you paid off the loan. Save states are helpful here if you're emulating. This one's likely to be a headache for a lot of people, one that hopefully doesn't sour the experience, since unlike most things in this game, there's no getting around this one other than winning. The visuals are early 3D, which is not my favorite. Still, while I've said in the past that the Legend series wears this well, the more mechanical characters having the blockier polygons and spiky anime hair going well with this, for some reason, this does look a little rougher. Might be because I've also played this on emulator, which looked a bit sharper, so maybe the comparison is skewing my impression. And as I think I mentioned last time, surfaces look pretty flat, probably because they are. I can't really call it a complaint though, since that's pretty much how things were back then, given hardware capabilities. I just seem to mind it a bit more here. Of course, my gripes get blown away by another aspect of the visuals, the character portraits and headshots. Every time a character talks, rather than just some 3D models staring blankly at each other, instead you get either a bubble with their face or almost a full body shot yammering out the lines. There's different expressions and poses to really sell the dialogue, rather than just a static face wearing the same goofy smile regardless of what they're feeling, which really adds a lot to the performance. On top of all that, each looks like a hand-drawn image that was then pixelated. While I'm guessing that was due to some limitation, the animations still look wonderful, and I don't really mind pixels besides, so this is a huge plus in the game's favor. The soundtrack is good. I mean, it doesn't have as many bangers as I typically expect from a Rockman title. I'd describe much of the background music as background music. It's there, it maintains the vibe, but I don't find myself focusing on it and rocking out to it. Still, what's here is enough, especially if you played the first Legends game and remember running around the ruins in silence, other than your footfalls and those of the Reaverbots creeping around, possibly just around the corner. While that certainly served a purpose, I don't think Misadventures is really a game meant to keep you on edge. There are a few tracks that I think are pretty strong though, like the main theme, which gets remixed a few times for major points in the game, so it makes sense that there be a bit more attention paid to it. The music for the Servbot training minigames is silly and energetic enough to keep you motivated, and my favorite track is the Colossus Arena, which is the theme for the first phase of the final boss. Can I explain why while still avoiding spoilers? Let's just say it seems to fit the action. Still, even if Misadventures doesn't have as many tracks that I'd add to my mixtape as usual, I don't think there's any bad numbers, and they get the job done. The sound effects are also fun and appropriate, things like firing and collision. The big star in the sound department though, is the voice acting. While on the Gesellschaft, you'll just get text boxes when talking to Servbots, but every cutscene and in-mission line is spoken, some characters even making some noise just running around, like excited Servbots or disgruntled civilians. As for the quality of the voice acting, we once again get the unusually high level established by the Legends series. Maybe it's because the goofier line delivery just suits the series better than Classic or X, but the over-the-top voices give it a more cartoony vibe, which works especially well with the character portraits I mentioned before. And while Bonne sounds a bit different, as far as I can tell, the rest of the major characters retain their voices, the Servbots having multiple, sometimes even for repeated lines, and the deliveries for the newcomers also fit. While I'm not sure whether they made this thing almost fully voice acted out of a craftsman's pride, or just from amusement at the novelty of being able to put more and clearer voices in games, this really adds a lot to the experience, and I kinda wanna say makes the game. The beauty of the Misadventures of Tron Bonne is that there's very little that you have to do to clear it. There's the intro section, which teaches you the basics so you'd want to complete it regardless, the final dungeon and boss, and then the 2-stage final boss, but for everything else, you can pick and choose. If you're not feeling something, you can just skip it. If you don't have the patience for the longer Digout missions, or you're no good at block moving puzzles, you don't need to engage with them. You decide how you go about repaying the debt. Heck, get far enough in and you can even just gamble your way across the finish line. Because of preference, I tend to stick to options with story content, so the casino and block puzzles I'm not as familiar with as everything else, but hopefully I didn't get anything wrong when talking about them. Even with this freedom though, there are a few limitations. Most of these missions do have an endpoint. If you love robbing banks, you can only do that 3 times before you complete that storyline. You can't just focus on that for the entire game. Some of the missions only get unlocked so far in as well, so you can't just shoot right for cattle wrangling. I'll also say that the one type of gameplay you absolutely do need to learn is combat with the Gustaff. Not only is this the method for the required sequences I mentioned, it's also the one that gets reused the most. I guess you could say it's the main type of gameplay, which is fair enough. Just about every game has one. It can just be annoying when they change the genre and you have to learn to play a completely new style of game, like needing to play Ikaruga to beat the final boss in an open zone platforming title. The major deviations are optional here though, and even with some of the stuff with the Gustaff, if you don't want to do something here, be it lack of enjoyment, or just because you can't seem to get the hang of it, you don't need to clear it. Because of this, it shouldn't be too big of a hurdle to get to Endgame. That part can certainly be tricky, and players who made their fortune through methods other than combat might get frustrated, but I mean, that's Endgame for you. Beyond that, the missions do get gradually harder, so it does have a good difficulty progression, and the tight windows on the mini-games are certainly demanding, but a lot of the situations can come down to upgrades. This can be a little obtuse though, and on early runs, I couldn't even figure out how to give my Servbots gifts to unlock stuff, so I played through the entire game pretty much default, which was pretty darn hard. I'm surprised I didn't have a meltdown on the final boss. You also gotta know when to use what weapon. The bazooka is strong but slow, so I mostly use Gatling gun, which rapidly shoots smaller shots, but this was actually worse than the default cannon against the small boss with a lot of iframes. Getting familiar with where to get materials, what to spend money on, which Servbots to raise, and what order to do all that will make the game easier, so there is a learning curve, but for newcomers, as long as you have a guide for items and know that you have to choose talk, then press another button to give a gift, I'd say this game is pretty doable. And if you ever have too much trouble, just make a lot of energy tanks. The Misadventures of Tron Bonne has pretty much everything going for it. While a little different, the gameplay for the Gustaff is pretty similar to the Legends titles, maintaining a link to the main series while still having a good bit of mission variety. It gives you options for how you complete the game and what parts you want to engage with, all while starring the best characters in the series, with its fun writing, charming voice acting, and even some really nice 2D animations to seal the deal. While I might have a few complaints, I really do love this game. I know a lot of people are praying that this one gets included in the eventual Legends Legacy Collection. Well, that sounds goofy, and while I doubt it, since Capcom doesn't include spin-offs in those, I hope I'm wrong, since not only would it be nice to not have to rely on my old copy, I also think it'd be great if it were easier for everyone to be able to enjoy it. It should go without saying that I recommend that people give the Misadventures of Tron Bonne a try, through whatever methods available to them. Everybody still has a PS3 linked to their PlayStation account, right? And I'd like to play it more myself, since I tend not to give all the different missions the same amount of attention. But let me ask you, have you played this one, and would you like to? Do you think we'll get it in a collection, and which is your favorite Servbot? With that, thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. Lunchtime, get in line!